ecosystem. I'm Nadav Cohen, faculty at the School of Computer Science, and it is with great pleasure that I invite on stage Sam Altman and Ilya Sutskever, CEO and Chief Scientist of OpenAI.
So, indeed, from the ages of 5 to 16, I lived in Jerusalem. I studied at the Open University from 2000 to 2002. To push on it. And the more you believe, the harder you can push. And that's what leads to the progress. Now, it's important that the thing you believe in is correct. But with that caveat, it's all about the belief.
Thank you very much. So, moving on to other topics. Progress in AI these days, and for a while now, is largely driven by industry. So I was wondering what you feel should be the role of academic research in the field as it evolves.
Yeah. No, it is true. It is a very... Things have changed a lot. Academia used to be the place where the most cutting-edge AI research has been happening. Now, not so much, for two reasons. The amount of compute and the engineering. Academia has less compute and generally does not have an engineering culture. And yet, academia can make very dramatic and significant contributions to AI, just not to the most cutting-edge capabilities. The place that academia can contribute to, there are so many mysteries about the neural.
It's the right strategy to open source everything. If the models of today are interesting, they have some usefulness, but they're quite primitive relative to the models we'll create. And I think most people would agree if you make a super powerful AGI that has wonderful upsides, but existential downsides, open source may not be the best answer for that. And so we're trying to figure out the balance. We will open source some things. We will, over time, as we understand models more, be able to open source more. And we have published a lot, right? I think like a lot of the key ideas that other people are now using to build LLMs were published by OpenAI. And I think like, from the early GPT papers, the scaling models, some of the RLHF work. But it's a balance that we have to figure out as we go, and we have like a lot of different tensions.
Opportunities, so just a couple of minutes on that, because I agree it's important. So there are probably at least 3 classes of risks that one can imagine. One is economic dislocation, jobs becoming redundant, things like that. Another one could be maybe a powerful weapon in the hands of one person. For example, a hacker could do probably something equivalent to thousands of hackers before that they were able to use these tools. And the last maybe which is to some the most concerning, is a system that it gets out of control. Even the people that triggered it to do something can't stop it. So I was wondering what you feel like is a likely scenario on each of these.
Okay, the likely scenario on each of the risks. Economic dislocation. Let's start with that. So you mentioned 3. Economic dislocation, hacker, super intelligent, they are being out of control. Yeah, so economic dislocation indeed, like we already know that there are jobs that are being impacted or they're being affected. In other words, some chunks of the jobs can be done. If you're a programmer, you don't write functions anymore. Copilot writes them for you. If you're an artist, though, it's a bit different because a big chunk of the artist's economic part of activity is taken by some of the image generators. I think that indeed it's going to be not a simple time with respect to jobs. And while new jobs will be created, it's going to be a long period of economic uncertainty. There is an argument to be made that even when we have fully, we have full human level AI, full AGI, people will still have economic activity to do. I don't know whether that's the case. But in either event, we will need to have something that will allow for a soften the blow, to allow for a smoother transition either to the totally new profession that will exist, or even if not, then we want the government, the social systems will need to kick in. On the offense question, the hackers, yeah, that's the tricky one. Indeed, AI will be powerful and it could be used in powerful ways by bad actors. Right now we're here, today, that's where we are. That's where we're going to get to. When we get to this point, then yeah, it's very powerful technology. It can be used for amazing applications. You can say cure all disease. On the flip side, you can say create a disease. Much more worse than anything that existed before. That'd be bad. So we will need to have structures in place that will control the use of the technology. It's powerful. You know, Sanders proposed a document where we said the IAEA for AI to controlling very powerful technologies, but for AI specifically. That's the IAEA is the organization that controls nuclear power. To the last question, the super intelligent AI that's out of control. Yeah, that'd be pretty bad. Yeah, so it's like it would be a big mistake to do the super intelligent AI that we don't know how to control.
Yeah, of course. That's I strongly agree. On the economic point, I find it very difficult to reason about how this is going to go. I think there's so much surplus demand in the world right now, and these systems are so good at helping with tasks, but for the most part today, not current jobs, that I think in the short term the picture actually just looks pretty good. It's going to be a lot of dramatic productivity growth, and we're going to find out that if you can make programmers 2 times as productive, there's more than 2 times as much code that the world needs, so it's all good. Categories of jobs, some of them will go away, but some others will turn out to like really need humans, and people really want humans in these roles in ways that are not very obvious. One example is that one of the first times the world saw AI was when Deep Blue beat Kasparov, and everyone said, you know, chess is totally over. No one is ever going to play chess again because it's not interesting. And that was just consensus that everybody agreed with. Chess has never been more popular than it is right now. Humans have gotten better at chess. The expectation has gone up. We can learn better with these tools. But people still really want to play, and humans seem to still really care about what other humans do. You know, DALL-E can make great art, but people still care about the human behind the art that they want to buy and that sort of we all think is special and valuable. On the chess example, like, people watch humans play chess more than ever before too, but not very many people like watch 2 AIs play each other. So I think there are just going to be all of these things that are difficult to predict. The human desire to differentiate, to create new things, to sort of most personally excited about. With AI, I think there's like tremendous, wonderful things that are going to happen all over the place. Huge economic benefits, huge healthcare benefits. But the fact that AI can help us do scientific discovery that we currently aren't capable of, we're going to likely to understand the mysteries of the universe, and more than that, I really believe that scientific and technical progress is the only sustainable way that lives get better, that the world gets better. And if we can go unlock a gigantic amount of new science, new technological progress, which I think we're already seeing the beginnings of, with people using these tools to be more efficient. But if you imagine a world where you could say AI helps you cure all disease, and it helps you cure all disease, like, this could be a dramatically better world. And I think we're not so far away from that. I want to say this because climate change is so serious and so hard of a problem, but I think once we have a really powerful superintelligence, addressing climate change will not be particularly difficult for a system like that.
We can even explain how. You need a very large amount of efficient carbon capture. You need the energy for the carbon capture, you need the technology to build it, and you need to build a lot of it. If you can accelerate the scientific progress, which is something that a powerful AI could do, we could get to a very advanced carbon capture much faster. We could get to a very cheap power much faster. We could get to cheaper manufacturing much faster. And combine those 3, cheap power, cheap manufacturing, advanced carbon capture. And we built lots of them. And now you sucked out all the excess CO2 from the atmosphere. And this plan today is a little bit difficult. If you have an AI which accelerates science and engineering very dramatically, it becomes very straightforward.
And I think this illustrates how big we should dream. You know, if you think about a system where you can say, tell me how to make a lot of clean energy cheaply, tell me how to efficiently capture carbon, and then tell me how to build a factory to do this at planetary scale. If you can do that, you can do a lot of other things too.
With one addition that not only you ask you to tell us, you ask you to do it.
Okay.
Controllable, better, the whole thing. So you do this, and then you get a whole new world of applications. A bit hard to predict, but we expect everything to become much better and very significant.
I hope that the world is never odd at us again. I hope that, you know, people had an update with ChatGPT, but from here on, it is one continuous smooth curve of progress. At every stage, we're confronting the risks successfully. It always feels, you know, like it's doing what you want and it's safe to use. But every year, your expectations go up and we deliver on them. And it feels like this gradual acceleration of technology, but in a way that very much is a tool that serves you.
To the world that sets it apart from the other models? Or am I wasting my time installing stable Vicuña, 13 billion plus Wizard? Am I wasting my time? Tell me.
Open source models question. You don't want to think about it in binary black and white terms where, like, there is a secret source that will never be rediscovered. What I will say, or whether GPT-4 will ever be reproduced by open source models. Perhaps one day it will be. But when it will be a much more powerful model in the commons. So there will always be a gap between the open source models and the private models. And this gap may even be increasing with time. The amount of effort and engineering and research that it takes to produce one such neural net keeps increasing. And so, even if there are open source models, they will be less and less produced by small groups of dedicated researchers and engineers, and it will only be the provenance of the company.
Secondly, should regulation will imposed upon you, upon OpenAI and other AI companies, will you obey or behave much like, say, Mark Zuckerberg, who tried to evade every regulation he finds? Thank you.
I think it's a super fair and good question. And the most troublesome part of our jobs is that we have to balance this like incredible promise in this technology that I think humans really need. And we'll talk about why in a second, with confronting these very serious risks. Why to build it? Number one, I do think that when we look back at the standard of living and what we tolerate for people today, it will look even worse than when we look back at how people lived 500 or 1,000 years ago. And we'll say like, man, can you imagine that people lived in poverty? Can you imagine people suffered from disease? Can you imagine that everyone didn't have a phenomenal education and were able to live their lives however they wanted? It's going to look barbaric. I think everyone in the future is going to have better lives than the best people of today. And again, the upside there is tremendous. So I think there's like a moral duty to figure out how to do that. I also think this is like unstoppable. Like this is the progress of technology. It won't work to stop it, and so we have to figure out how to manage the risk. We were formed as a company in large part because of this risk and the need to address it. We have an unusual structure. We have a capped profit. I believe that incentives are superpowers, and if you design the incentives right, you usually get the behavior you want. So, you know, like, we're gonna all do fine. We're not gonna make any more or less money if we like make the numbers go a little further up to the right. We don't have the incentive structure that a company like Facebook had, and I think there were very well-meaning people at Facebook. They were just in an incentive structure that had some challenges. So we tried to take AGI, we tried to, as Ilya always says, we tried to feel the AGI when we were setting up our company originally, and then we set up our capital profit structure. So how do we balance the need for the money for compute with what we care about as this mission? And one of the things we talked about is what's a structure that would let us warmly embrace regulation that hurt us the most? It replaced Wikipedia for me. I used to spend a lot of time learning stuff on Wikipedia, and I think the thing you would find if you looked through mine is how effective it can be at learning new knowledge in the Wikipedia style. So I don't do like the deep teach me everything about physics that I know some people do, but the like I heard about this thing and I want to learn about it as quickly as possible. You would find a surprisingly effective tool for that.
Sam, but the 3.5 model